Am I looking at the camera?
No, you don't have to.
Okay, just talking. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome back to La Carnita Asada. I'm your host, George Salazar. I'm here with Rosalba Valdez, a singer-songwriter from Pilsen. Today we'll be
Little
eating,
village too.
oh, Little Village too. Today we'll be eating Los Comales, a staple in Little Village community. So I kind of want to get right into it. So I know you grew up in the Pilsen neighborhood. Our neighbors to the east. I know it's not the same Pilsen that it was, 15, 20 years ago. Can you tell me a little bit about like what you've noticed that's changed and sort of how you feel about it?
Sure, yeah, let's, I guess, dive right in. Well, obviously, the neighborhood has been severely gentrified.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's changed significantly. I myself don't live in Pilsen anymore. I technically live in Little Village, the Marshall Square area.
Okay.
But it's because of the same thing. It's because of rising rent prices. It's
Yeah.
because I can't afford it, plain and simple. And so, of course, I see it now kind of trickling down westward also, moving into Little Village, the whole gentrification thing. But, I have faith that with the right elected officials, with the right mobilization of people, we can try to avoid that.
Yeah.
So.
So can you tell me a little bit about like what it was like growing up there?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up, I don't know if it was the neighborhood or if it was my family or just what it was, but I grew up just going like to church, like from church to church, from school to school, from Pickard School all the way to Whittier School, from St. Pius all the way to St. Paul, just doing music stuff. My dad was always taking me to guitar classes wherever they offered them. So we were always just moving around. After school, that's what I was doing.
Guitar. Yeah,
Guitar.
it's actually kind of funny. Right now, in music class, because I have to take one for to graduate.
Uh-huh.
So we're learning the guitar, and I'm terrible. Like I'm bad. Like it's hard like getting my fingers to like the right areas. But when we played the ukulele, I would kill it. I'm like, oh,
Aw.
yeah. So you're talking a little bit about like gentrification in Pilsen. Like, what are your thoughts when it comes to that? Do you think that it can be beneficial, or you're like totally against it?
Oh my God. Beneficial? No. I feel like people think it can be beneficial. For example, one of the arguments is that it makes crime go away, but that's not true at all. If you see right now, Pilsen is actually, there's a lot of talk in regards to community safety and violence and all the shootings that have been happening recently. And people think, or they thought at least, that with gentrification, it was moving people out of the neighborhood. But obviously, this didn't necessarily make all the bad things go away. And again, like the bad things in our neighborhood have root causes that have not been addressed. And so when we try to cover it up by just displacing people, it's not a real solution to things like that. So I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. But yeah, you kind of have to go deeper into it, especially when people have arguments like that.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way about it. I mean, I live here in Little Village. I'm sort of talking to Ernesto and Ray about it all the time. Like they're always explaining to me like we're sort of like Little Village is like the early stages of gentrification. There's a lot of like big properties that are going up for sale and people wanting to,
Right.
come in and people with money come in and buy and sort of, raise the property value. And I feel the same way. Like change should come from within, right? Like I feel like it's our community, so it's up to us to figure it out and sort of change it on our own rather than have somebody come in and like save the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to happen like that. Nothing is ever handed to us, honestly, unfortunately. So we definitely have to fight for our own community.
So I know you went to Whitney Young. Can you tell me a little bit about like what it was like going to school there?
Yeah, so I know Ernesto also went to Whitney Young. I wonder what his experience was. I want to ask after this.
Yeah.
But yeah, my experience, you know what, my microphone.
There you go.
Okay. I didn't even notice.
You're good. You're good. It was still
Hopefully
picking it up.
recorded
Yeah, yeah,
all
you're
of
good.
that. But yeah, my experience was definitely I don't know if a lot of people feel the same way that I felt, but I definitely felt I don't know. I think every teenager goes through a hard time. Um just because, we're teenagers,
Yeah.
right? But at the time I was definitely like really involved in like I don't know, community activism with my church, with like the community organization based out of that church, around immigration, around just like local things. I remember it was also like an election year for like mayor, alderman, all that stuff. Chewy was actually running back then, and I was definitely like going hard for Chewy as, you know, this high schooler.
Yeah.
But seeing like the segregation out in Young, like I feel like not everybody wants to admit it, right? Especially Whitney Young, like it claims diversity, like that's one of their biggest things, right? But when I was there, like I saw the segregation in that diversity. So for example, like at this at lunch, like you see everybody hanging out with like their own group, right? Like you see the white people hanging out with the white people, the Mexicans with the Mexicans, the black people with the black people. And of course, like many times, like it's because I think it just reflects the city in itself and how segregated the city is, because black people feel more comfortable with each other, especially when they live in a certain area, right? Like I was always hanging out with the people who lived around me, and like after school, we're taking the same train, the same bus, compared to other people who are taking other trains or other buses. So it's like that's how it was for me, and it really messed with me, with my brain. So,
Like in what way?
I don't know. I definitely fell into like a depression. I definitely had anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety, and it really just stemmed from like this culture shock where I was exposed to so many just like things and really seeing how it would affect me in my own life. Almost feeling like imposter syndrome, like maybe I didn't fit in, things like that. So that's how it affected me. But yeah.
I've interviewed quite a few people that went to Whitney Young, and I always ask that same question, like the culture shock.
Yeah.
And it's always sort of like the same story. Like they only really hung out with like their group of people. Like
Yeah.
the Latinos only hung out with the Latinos. I can relate to that because like in my school it's majority black, so it's like all the black kids hang out together, and like I mean, it's like the Latinos, we have like a small group like in the auditorium, like in our own little section.
Yeah.
We're always just like by ourselves, and I feel like that's sort of bullshit in a way. Like
Right.
we need to figure out how to like unite and come together.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like maybe there were like, you know, like the different groups or like the people who talk to each other regardless, right? Because, you know, you still have classes where maybe you're not with like your friends, stuff like that. But it just, again, it's like a reflection of the city in itself and how segregated the city is. And that just translates into every other area. And it's really up to us to be conscious of that, to educate ourselves and educate each other when we figure these things out and be like, hey, like, let's build these, you know, cross race, whatever, gender collaborations and connections, because if not, like, it's going to continue like that. So
You talk a little bit about like anxiety or like imposter syndrome. Yeah, I can relate to that too. Like sort of like
food's getting cold.
Huh? Oh yeah, go ahead
Food's
eat.
getting
Feel
cold.
free to
No,
eat.
you keep talking.
Oh, yeah, I just want to ask you like, what are some ways like you sort of deal with that? Like maybe like I mean I know you deal with it differently now, but like when you were younger, how would you deal with that? Because I sort of struggle with the same thing.
Man, I didn't deal with it.
Oh shit.
There were times where I was going to the hospital because I really thought I was dying, but it was just an anxiety or panic attack that I was having. I remember my parents taking me and being so worried. But it's like, I don't know. I don't know what more can be done than like seeking things like therapy. Because there are so many issues I think that go into everybody's individual experience and individual battles. Like, for example, my anxiety. Things like doing my homework and just doing schoolwork in general were never things that I was worried about. All of a sudden, I go to Whitney Young and I feel like I don't have the proper tools to do my work. Things like having a laptop. Like, I didn't have a laptop my freshman, sophomore year. And again, that's because I come from like a low income family and things like that. So it's like, I think things like that were things that contributed to my anxiety. And just like my feelings of imposter syndrome, whatever. But just like understanding that now, I see that like there's really not much that I could have done for myself. My parents tried their hardest also, but in general, like society, as a society, I think we need to take better care of each other, especially for like the people who have been historically disenfranchised, disinvested in. So
So I know you went to UIC. Would you major in there, and why UIC?
I majored in marketing, and why? Because it's the only school I applied to. Um,
Like, was that like, where you were not planning to go to school, or what was that?
no, I knew I wanted to go to school, but I don't know. I almost applied to DePaul too, but it was the most affordable option for me.
Okay.
And again, like the whole imposter syndrome thing, like I didn't feel like I could get into Harvard. I didn't feel like I could get into other schools, even though I think now I look back and it's
Yeah.
like I've always been,
Pretty. Yeah.
pretty okay. I think I don't want to say I'm smart, but I think I'm, capable. Um, but you know, I also did not have, and it's like I don't want to like victimize myself, quote unquote, right? But I didn't have people telling me go to college. Like my parents did not tell me to go to college. I remember even talking to like a counselor at school, and it was also like around the time when I was going through like the anxiety, depression. So it's the only school I applied to, and it's like the next week I got the
Uh,
approval,
yeah.
the award, whatever, the acceptance letter. But yeah, no, it's like sometimes I remember my freshman year of college, I was like, man, I should have applied to more schools, this and that. Um, but then I got over that because
Yeah.
honestly, there's no point in looking back except forward and just learning from, you know, your past. So,
So you talk a little about like how your dad used to take you to like guitar lessons after
hmm,
school. So that I'm kind of getting that's how like the love for music started to come around.
yeah.
Through college, did you sort of know like, hey, this is what I want to do, and like I'm just gonna go for it?
Hmm.
And like, was the love there right away, or did you sort of like just was it just something that was natural?
No, man, the love has always been there. It's like since I started playing guitar, learning guitar when I was like 5,
Hmm.
right? So when I was 5, I was really into it. And after that, like, I kept being encouraged by my dad
Yeah.
specifically. And then by community in general, right? Like going to these different churches and different places to learn guitar and music. Of course, I don't want to say I was naturally talented, but because I was so invested in it, I was learning at a, good pace. So people would encourage me. And I think that's what really kept pushing me. And then, like, obviously, music for a lot of people is a passion, even if you don't necessarily play an instrument or sing or anything like that. Just listening to music in itself is such an escape and form of expression. So, um, when I started college, I started as a political science major because I thought, oh, I want to change the world. I'm going to be a lawyer or a lobbyist or something, right? Along those lines to, I don't know, do something in regards to like politics.
Yeah.
But it was also because I felt like the societal pressure that like, oh, I need to go to college and follow like a specific path. I didn't feel like music was something I could really pursue. Even though I was still doing it, I was still gigging. I was in a bunch of bands, like just backing bands up and things like that. As a guitar player, right, playing at like bars, playing festivals, things like that. So even though I was doing it, I never felt like I could. Not never, but at the time, I felt like I had to pursue a degree and do like I don't know something proper. Um, but then like I think sophomore year, I that kind of changed, and
You're
I
just like,
was
I'm gonna
like,
go for it.
yeah, I'm gonna go for it. Like, let me change my major to marketing. That'll be more helpful for music, anything music related. And then if it's not helpful for that, I guess it could be like a what do you call it, safety
Yeah.
degree or something. So,
Was there like immediate support from like your peers and your parents, or was sort of like, Mija, go to school to do something like that for sure thing, you know?
oh man, I don't want to say again that like nobody was telling me what to do, but nobody was really telling me
Yeah.
what to do or not to do.
Okay.
So really, it's just been me figuring this out and being like, well, what is it that I want to do? Like, I took this like passion test, like from a book. Like, what is it that I want to do? Like, how do I see myself in 5 years? What do I really want to do in 5 years? Not just how do I see myself because of what I think I'm capable of. And so after doing that, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do music. Like, and I tried it, and so far it's been I don't know going well. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but that's how it's happened so far.
So like there's a lot of like betting on yourself there, right? Like,
Pretty much.
yeah, it's sort of the same. I mean, I play baseball, so it's sort of like the same thing, right? Like, you got to dream it, and a lot of people, might even think it's crazy, or like, oh, you'll never make it, or it's impossible, or it's super hard. Do you ever deal with like self doubt, or are you always like, I got it?
Mm, definitely. Um, but you know what? I don't deal with as much self doubt as I used to, and I feel like I'm in a better position to handle it now. Also,
How do you deal with that? Like, how do you when you catch yourself having those negative moments, those negative thoughts, like, what do you do to like snap you back into like, nah, fuck that, I got it, you know?
first of all, I definitely surround myself with people who are supportive of what I'm trying to achieve. I know like 5 years ago, I didn't necessarily feel like I was supported by people who were like really like, oh yeah, you got this Rosalba, about like, oh, you want to do something with music? Um, like we'll support you however we can. Um, but now I definitely feel like, whenever I have doubt, like about anything, I talk to friends, I talk to people who I just know are going to support me. I also have a therapist, which I think helps, which also took time to find the right therapist. But, I think that's like the biggest thing for me.
How is that, like, having a therapist? Because my sort of like thoughts on it, like, maybe it's like, just growing up like as a guy, and your dad telling you or your mom telling you like, no llores, like, you're a boy, like, it's kind of hard for me to be like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to somebody about my feelings. And I mean, who knows what you do, like cry or whatever, like pay somebody to hear me out. Like, was it hard for you to sort of like, hey, I'm gonna go get a therapist, or it was pretty like an easy decision?
For me, it was an easy decision because for me, I've always been trying to figure out like how to deal with my anxiety, depression, right? Like since high school, I was like, I need help. And something I realized is that you sometimes, like when you're in that position, you just cannot help yourself. You need other people. And that other people doesn't necessarily have to be your parents, doesn't have to be your siblings or even your friend. Like it can be a stranger. And like these people are supposed to be professionals at least, right? Like um, taking into account like cultural differences, Spanish, language barriers, things like that, right? But in this world and society in general, like you need other people. And I think that many times I know that like it's taboo sometimes, but that's what I keep trying to like push to people. Like we need each other. Like nothing can be done by ourselves. Like if it was just like one person on this world, I don't know if we'd be able to survive. So I don't know.
No, that makes sense.
Even with like mental health related stuff.
Like, even listening to you right now, I'm just gotta be, like, it's kind of going for me in my head right now. Like, sometimes it's okay to talk to somebody. Like, you can't just put everything on you, and you have to,
Yeah,
like, you need
yeah.
others to help figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about your song, "Lucha de Familias." It hits close to home. Little Village being home to so many immigrants. Can you just tell me a little bit about the song? How you came up with it, and I want to know a little bit about the music video as well.
Yeah, so the song, well, it really just came about because first of all, I grew up in this activist environment too, which, has always reminded me like there's a lot at stake in our world. It's literally people's lives. Like politics isn't everything. And so this song came about because my church was coming out with a bill called Right to Family that they were trying to get passed and basically advocating for protection from deportation for immigrants in the US. Sorry.
Very good.
And so, sorry.
No, you're good. Take your time, relax.
Sorry, it's like I just got tired of
No,
talking.
you're good. You're good. You're good.
I'm like also trying to eat and then, but yeah, so it came about because my church came out with this bill and we needed like a campaign song. And so the song Lucha de Familias was supposed to be just like showing different experiences of immigrants.
Yeah.
And so I wrote, I wrote it like from different perspectives. Like I think the first verse is like from the perspective of somebody who came here when they were like 6 years old, I think. I need to go over the lyrics just to make sure that that's true. I think like the second verse says something about somebody who came here right like a month too late to make the cut for DACA and be a DACA recipient. So they didn't make it, but they could have been a
Yeah.
DACA recipient and, you know,
Hmm.
protected from deportation if they had just been here 1 month earlier. So just trying to show like the injustices in our system currently, but also at the same time, it's a call to action for Mexicans, but Latinos and people in general to stand up for human rights.
So you like talking about like taking action through music or something
Mm-hmm.
like sort of poetry in a way. I just yesterday literally in class I was just reading a poem from by Langston Hughes. Our teacher gave it to us, and it's sort of about like I forgot what it's called, or it's called I Too or something like that. And sort of like in that poem, like we broke it down,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like Langston Hughes sort of taking in like a stand,
Mm-hmm.
like talking. I don't want to break down the poem on here, but like taking a stand towards African American racism in America.
Mm-hmm.
So is that sort of like something that you always wanted to do? Like you wanted to be an activist through music, or is it something that just like came about?
I don't think I necessarily wanted to.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to. Um, I wish I didn't feel this need to. And maybe it's not a need, maybe it's just a want, right? But
Yeah.
I guess it's like this want to change the world or to make a better world over the future, to, I don't know, build coalitions or I don't know. I think it's because of myself also, like, thinking of my younger self, thinking of the people around me and like seeing people suffer
Yeah.
because of unjust laws. I mean, at a certain point, like when you're surrounded by that, like it hits you. And it's like, again, you either do nothing about it and everything stays the same, or you try to do something. And for me, it was like music was always there for me. And growing up, like, and playing at certain events, like fundraisers or whatever it might be, especially around like the cause of immigration. Um, and just seeing like people's reaction to my songs and music and seeing how it like I don't know, just
How does that
touched
feel?
people. How does that feel? I mean, it feels powerful. It's like music is powerful, and then like for me to be like, man, like I have power with this.
Yeah.
I have a voice with this. Like I can reach a lot more people through this than maybe just me screaming on the street like, "Yo, there's something going on. Like pay attention to me." I feel like with this, like I can give people more calls to action or make what I've heard before is like making the movement. I don't know if it's attractive, but like making the movement cool. And it's like I think that's like what the artist's role is supposed to be in the revolution. So that's I guess what I'm trying to
All right,
do.
that's actually really
as
cool.
as funny or I don't know.
No,
That sounds.
I feel like that's, I mean, not exactly the same
Hmm.
goal, but here at Urban Warriors, we sort of try to do the same thing. Whether it's like working with the youth or working with small businesses, we're trying to, make difference. That's actually why we do this podcast.
Hmm.
And it's why it's run by young people, so we can show other young people out there in different communities that like
Hmm.
we need to take action as young people and sort of shape the world at like how we want it to be when we get older.
Hmm. Yeah, because all the older people that made horrible decisions for us, or maybe are just really mean and like evil or racist or whatever it might be, um, they're not going to be here that much longer. So
Yeah,
it's really up to us to
exactly.
figure these things out.
So I want to sort of like track your progression as an artist a little bit.
Mhm.
I've been in situations like again in English class where I have to like try to write a poem or come up with something on my own, and I can't. I'm sitting there looking at
Mhm.
the piece of paper like shit. I could imagine it might have been hard at first for you, like sort of come up with songs, or was it something that like came really quick and easy?
Mm. I remember writing my first song when I was in first grade, for
Oh
sure.
shit.
So I don't know how hard it's been, but I'm also very imaginative and creative, and I read a lot of books growing up, so I feel like that really helped with my imagination. Like I don't know if maybe that it was that or something else.
So like there wasn't much struggle there.
I don't want to say there was much struggle. But maybe like during the pandemic, it was definitely hard. But I feel like if maybe I sat down to try to do it, it would have done better. I don't know. I feel like for me, it's like even if I can't tell like my own experience, I can always try to put myself in someone else's shoes. So it's like sometimes I don't want to talk about my experiences, like my personal battles or anything like that, right? Like
What? Like why is that?
I don't know, because you put yourself in a very vulnerable situation. So I feel like for me, sometimes it's easier to write about other people's situations and put myself in their shoes. So I feel like I've done that with a lot of my music actually. And I'm kind of moving into a space where I'm not doing that as much, especially with like my new projects.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to write more so from my perspective, and a lot of the songs that are from my perspective, um, I don't know if I'll ever release, especially like the ones from like 5 years ago, because they're very angsty, like
Yeah.
angst. They definitely show my anxiety, but I'm in a different space now, so I don't know if they really fit with me. Maybe I'll put them up on like on SoundCloud or something, but yeah, we'll see.
I mean, but who knows, right? Like, it'd be pretty cool to like release something like that, sort of
Yeah.
like track your own progression. Like, I was there,
Hmm.
a couple years ago, and maybe people see that, and then they see where you are now, and it's sort of inspiring in a
Right.
way.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like, I have lots of talks to Ernesto about it. Like, it's hard for me to put myself in vulnerable situations, to like
Hmm.
speak about myself from my own experiences. It's something I had to actually work on, to do this, because how comfortable would you be like if I'm over here just asking about you and not really sharing about myself?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that,
No,
by the
yeah,
way.
yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, because I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm doing too much or
No, you're good. You're
talking
good.
too much sad stuff.
No, you're good. So now you're getting booked more and more, and I know you've done some big festivals. Like, how was it doing like that first big festival?
Hmm.
And what was it, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, I've done a couple. I don't know which one would count as like the first big one. For sure, like Ruido Fest, I think pops up, and that I think has been the biggest stage that
Yeah.
I've been on. But the first like festival that I did was Mole de Mayo in Pilsen, so that felt like I was just like at home. This is like my neighborhood. I know like the festival. I've been at the festival before, things like that. So it was very first of all, definitely nerve wracking. But more so because of all the back end stuff. Not so much because of the performance itself, but because of having to actually prepare
Yeah.
with the band and rehearse and things like that, and then coordinate around different schedules. So that's really what usually makes me more nervous, instead of the actual performance itself. But even like with the performance, like I've noticed that every time I really, really prepare, like that usually makes me feel
A lot
just
better.
a lot more confident. And when I'm up there, it's like easier to talk to people. But yeah, I mean, those performances, I mean, they were amazing. Like, but I definitely felt, I think at the time for both performances, like, you know what, like this, there's more to come. Like, and I need to, I don't know, I don't want to say up my game, but I
Yeah.
felt like not that I could do better, but like all of a sudden I wanted more. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that makes sense. So there's not really like much nerves that go into like when you're performing. Like, I know personally, if I had to stand up there in front of a bunch of people, I'd be pretty nervous.
You know what? Maybe like right before.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But it's like once you're on, it's like it all goes away, right?
I feel like, man, because I all of a sudden have to focus. I have to focus on hitting the pitch and like doing
Oh
this,
shit.
doing that. So it's like all of a sudden it's like there's no
There's
room
no
or
time to be nervous.
space to be
Yeah, that makes
nervous.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the same way. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Like before a game, I'm like I got butterflies, and then
Mhm.
you step in the box, like you catch a ball, and it's like, all right, like I'm here, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you can't even think about other people. It's like I'm just dancing too and stuff
Yeah,
up there. So
just
it's
having
like,
fun.
it feels like just a fun time sometimes.
It's
So
good. So I'm like in the early stages, you could say, of like starting out like my baseball career, and
nice.
it's
That's
a path
awesome.
that I'm like like I said, I'm betting on myself, and I'm just like, let's do it. 100%. I'm in.
What grade are you?
I'm a senior in high
Oh,
school.
you're a senior.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just actually turned 18 Saturday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so now me
Happy
and
birthday.
thank you. So now me and Ernesto are finally gonna fight. Um,
All right.
so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about like marketing. Like I took a look at your Instagram, and it's like it's on point. And I'm always
I appreciate
talking.
that.
I'm always talking. Ernesto or Ray, like about how to market myself properly, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to do that. So like, what's some advice you would give to myself or anybody else out there that's trying to figure out how to do that?
You know what? I feel like a lot of people would tell you like, oh, you need like brand guidelines, and you should figure out like what are your three pillars and whatnot for your content and just your brand in general, right? Like think of like themes, like if you want to be posting on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
It'd be baseball, maybe think of two other things, or maybe sub pillars or something like that. But honestly, I would just say that
So like by pillars, you mean like what do you mean by that? Like by pillars?
like themes.
Okay.
So think of like three things that you always want to like touch on, like on every post, like on Instagram or TikTok, whatever, right? But I feel like everything's changing so much, and people are just like really just craving authenticity
Yeah.
all the time. And also attention spans are really short. I think it's like people make up their mind like within point 0.8 seconds whether they want to look at a post or not. Like that's less than a second, and like if they don't like it, they just scroll. And it's true. I mean, I do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like keeping that in mind, but also like just I don't know. I mean, if you're doing cool stuff, I would just say always take a picture or some video, put it out there, like even if it's not perfect. I think that in itself like shows your consistency. Not just like for social media and like cloud and stuff like that, but like, for the people who are actually going to be your supporters. Because out of the thousands of followers that you can have, like it's the handful,
Like
that
real.
really engage and like, really like your story, I think that make it for you. So,
So I want to bring it back to, the hood and little village.
mm-hmm.
I see that, you're quite involved, I would say. I mean, personally, I think. What are some ways you think like younger people like myself can get involved in the neighborhood and sort of help out?
I mean, I would say you can start. I mean, I don't know if your school has any organizations or anything like that, but like you can start with like a local organization. I think even like just sending an email, like nowadays you can reach out to organizations online on their social media, like, hey, like when's the next event or when's the next volunteering opportunity, right? Like, and of course, like this isn't just like something you can do and then like forget about it, right? Like you can always like continue doing it. You can even do it as often enough to put it on your resume, right? Especially for young people who are, just going to college or just about to start looking for jobs, things like that, right? So it's like, I think there's benefits to helping your community also, in terms of like your own career. So like if you want to do something like be involved, like look for a local organization that really resonates with you. Like if there's something related to sports, right? Like maybe like teaching kids sports or something,
Yeah.
right? Like if you really, care and want to be involved, and I think everyone should because,
Yeah.
it doesn't just help other people, but it does help yourself too.
Mhm.
And just like the society in general and the environment, the community, right? But yeah, I think that's one way. So
So I just want to, what's next for you? Like, what do you got? You got any plans in the making or anything like that?
yeah, so what's next for me? Man, there's already some cool stuff booked for the summer, just some festivals, right? But aside from that, I'm working on my own project, an album that I want to release next year. It's definitely always a lot of work, and usually I'd be like, oh, like let me try to do it by the summer, but I'm not gonna do that to myself because I
Yeah.
want it to sound good. So I'm working on that, and hopefully it'll be like 10, 11 songs. This time I want to include more love songs.
Okay.
Not I want to sound corny, but I don't know. I'm just in that stage in my life where I want to write like 50s, 60s style. Like, I don't know if you've heard like things like Piel Canela, like
Okay.
that type of song. Like 50s, 60s Mexican music, like
Okay.
ballads. What else? What else? I don't know, stuff like that. So,
All right, that's pretty cool. So we're gonna start wrapping up, but one thing I like to do here on the show is sort of like tell you something that I took away from our conversation, or something that I'm
Okay.
grateful for. And honestly, I'm grateful that you came and that we had this conversation. I got to learn a lot about you. From what I've learned is, you're a very strong individual and very passionate and kind. You're very giving. You're talking about a lot how we need each other, and I think that's really important. And I like how, like, even talking about yourself, I can see how you're progressing in your life, right? Sort of talking about through high school, like you were like this shy, anxiety, depression,
Definitely.
and like now, like, you're glowing, you're putting music out there, you're even putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, telling me that, right?
Very.
Like, and you're not ashamed of it, which is
No.
is always really good to see, So, just thank you for everything that you do, and I'm truly grateful for this conversation, Rosalba.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you for appreciating, and thank you for having me, really.
For sure.
For also sharing your story.
Yeah.
And, your comments, your feedback, all of it. So.
Yeah. So before we leave, I do want to hear you play your guitar a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hopefully, I don't have cilantro on my teeth.
Oh, you're good.
I'm gonna do Lucha de Familias. It's my, most recent single. So, okay. Ahí les va. A este país llegué a los 6 años. A mis padres no podía pararlos. A buscar el sueño americano. Y a ese sueño sigue ganando. En California encontramos trabajo. Y en los campos hicimos el campo. Yo llegué a los 16 años, 15 de julio ya había pasado. Fue en el año de 2007, muy tarde para la acción del presidente. Como quisiera regresar el tiempo, haber llegado un mes más temprano. Con papeles, también sin papeles, esos ojos solo mexicanos, no se duerman allá en sus laureles. Ahora es tiempo de organizarnos en la lucha para nuestras familias y justicia para el ser humano. All of the family and loved ones all over, living life looking over their shoulders, working hard to provide for their families, shining in the shadows where they're standing, and try to put us in all categories, but we all share a similar story. Con papeles, también sin papeles, esos ojos solo mexicanos, no se duerman allá en sus laureles. Ahora es tiempo de organizarnos en la lucha para nuestras familias y justicia para el ser humano.
Damn. That was great. Damn. I'm fucking speechless. I'm not gonna lie to you. When you first started singing, I was like, "Oh shit, she does this for real."
It's not out of tune.
Thank you, Rosalba. It's been real. And I'll see you guys next time.
Yay, thank you.